Good evening and welcome to part 3. Now I've got to confess I've been sort of racing ahead with this, and good news and bad news. The good news is I'm racing ahead with this, and things are coming together and they seem to be working reasonably well. If I get something to point with, I can show you sort of, here we go, where we are now. The last part you saw me in the other side of the radio at the other end, messing with the 2 power filter capacitors. This time I've come over towards this side of the radio, the output side, and I've taken out quite a few capacitors, as you can see by these new replacements here. Now this is loose because I've undone the bracket, and the reason for that is because this switch is broken, and also to get to the front of the radio, which I'll show you in a minute, you have to remove that to get the screwdriver in sort of this way. Now, yeah, my hand's well overexposed, but that's because I want to show you the insides here. If we take it through, this is the output transformer here, and the actual output valve is this one, and all of the resistors were intolerant, but the capacitor that was doing the bypassing was completely crap, and the one that actually replaces it is underneath. Now I don't know if you can just about, if I nudge that slightly out of the way, there's a little electrolytic under there, which replaces the original bypass cap. These were caps that were originally mounted from this edge down this way, and again these were valve decoupling caps. There's another bypass cap, another electrolytic, which replaces another one that was bypassed. As I say, all of these resistors were intolerant. Now I've checked these silver micas and these are also intolerant, so I was actually reluctant to change them at this point. So not only have we got these block type silver micas, but we've got these very low value moulded in wax micas, and they're actually working, so I thought I'd leave them alone. As the same with this particular capacitor here, which is the another filter capacitor. It's another 50 microfarad electrolytic, which is sort of almost right at the end of the chain, and I tested it and put a leakage through it. I did disconnect these resistors and, you know, give it a full couple of 100 volts, and it actually showed no leakage at all. It also hasn't got any of the usual gunk floating around the top, so I'm going to say this one seems to have had an easier life and has lasted. Eventually it may fail, but at that time we'll see. Coming back from this section, and if I just sort of move these wires over, this is the BFO section. There were a couple of issues in the BFO section. Again, one of the decoupling capacitors was pretty well dead. These filaments here, again the capacitors in there were actually worse than dead. They were flaking and black, and they really didn't look good. But I'm going to come right to the very front here. When I actually looked closely, this wire had never actually been soldered on at all to the ground. This is actually a ground wire that comes from the BFO capacitor, and that had never actually gone to ground. I think it was relying on using the casing as its return path. So that's basically what I've done in this section so far. Now I'm searching for a replacement switch. For now, what I'm tempted to do is wire this permanently in the off position without the noise limiter, and run with it like that until I can find either another switch or another set. Now, I have a reason for wanting to find another set, and I'll show you that in a minute. So anyway, yeah, this is the switch, and you can see the back end here is actually broken off, and some of the terminals are broken. So what I would do is I would probably just put a jumper wire between the two terminals that I want permanently connected, and leave it wired out for now, just to make sure that the thing works and works fine. With that, I'm going to spin it so that it's on its, what effectively would be its back, and there's the front of the radio with pretty much the cover removed. That's where the front panel will be. Now, I was looking for the source of why the front panel was live, and it turns out that, which one was it? This one, this pot here, didn't have its fibre washers. Now, I haven't got them all on at the moment, but I have put them back on the power and tone control for now. What it should have is this sort of arrangement. If I just bring it over to the middle here, you should have a fibre washer, then you should have another fibre stepped washer, an ordinary metal washer, and then a sleeved collar. So these go through the front panel and onto the control. So if I get the control here, I'll slide it over a bit and just put it on like this, so that as it comes through the front panel, the whole of the pot is insulated from the front panel. And in this case, somebody hadn't put that back, which had left the whole front panel live, and that's what had caused the original issue with me getting the zap, and you know, basically with it not being right. So what you've got now is you know, I will have to make up some sort of insulation system for this again, until I can find some replacement parts. These mounting posts sort of here, and if I bring it back into this sort of focus, these four are actually, I'm going to turn the light down a little bit, there we go, so it's not so washed out. These four here actually have two steel washers and then a thick fibre washer on top of them to insulate the front panel from these. This is the band change switch here, and this is the flexible coupling to the reduction drive that does the tuning capacitor. Pilot light is there, just the single pilot light, and all the other controls are, as I say, just hanging loose at the moment. There's the band, the BFO oscillator capacitor, the standby switch. This particular one is the BFO on off, I believe it is. I'll have to look at the front panel and say what one it is. Obviously these are the two stuffed cans here, and yeah, they're not quite straight, but that's that's just the way I've managed to stuff them, and me putting them back not as carefully as I could have done, I suppose. So this is sort of the chassis as is. If I bring it back up onto its top, you can see that I haven't actually done any work to this capacitor, because at the moment I don't see a need to. It's working. I'm not going to change anything at this point. This particular grommet here looks a bit heat damaged, but it is still insulating from the chassis, but only just. You can actually see the brass bushing coming through. So again, I'm going to have to do something with that, because that does require insulating from the case, although the pilot light goes sort of like that to the case, and there is another insulator at the end of right out shot just here, the pilot light to the front panel there. Why rely on one when there's meant to be a second there? As I say, this thing has seen some heat. So that's where we've got with this part of the chassis. Now, as I say, I can turn it back over and show you the power supply area where we had done the work before. And as long as everything fall on the floor, you can still see the thermistor, the original well-in resistor that goes off to the controls, the choke, and the capacitors we've replaced that are visible. This one here, these are the wires going to the fuse holders that I haven't refitted. This part of it is pretty well sorted. I did take the there was a wax paper capacitor under the bottom of here, which meant dismantling a couple of the connections to this gang of tuning pots, and I had to do that exceedingly carefully, because the last thing I wanted to do was have to completely start from scratch with this. As it is, I haven't disturbed any of the tunings so far, so hopefully when we do put it back together it will be reasonably close to what it should be. So yeah, as I say, this is the top part of the main chassis, shall we say. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop this on the floor out the way, and I'm going to bring up the other bit of bad news, and let me just get it here. That's the front panel, which is yet to be cleaned up. I did disconnect the knobs. Now it's obvious that this has been off before because of this double-sided sticky tape being fitted the way it was. You could see it round the controls, and B, the way it's been levered and bent. There's no way it would be that sort of bent from the factory. That would be a flat piece of metal. So again, if I find another set that's in better condition but electrically broken, then I'm going to try and get hold of it to get the front panel. Talking of front panels, here is the front panel, and you can instantly notice that I've changed something slightly. I went to do what I normally did, what I normally do with pretty much all radios. That was just soapy water to wash the scale. This thing was suffering from a severe case of nicotine poisoning. The insides of this were a little bit brown and sticky, to say the least. I'd taken the glass out and I'd clean that up. It still needs another go where I've been putting it back in, but this came out a really disgusting colour. So I put, some ordinary dish soap on the scale, and using a very soft bit of cloth, just wiped over like you do, same as I've done with umpteen other radios, and never had an issue. This one, the water was something like too warm, and it actually stripped off some of the paint from the lower scale, from the logging scale. So I thought, oh god, that looks abysmal. But I'm not going to scrap a radio because of a dirty scale, and I'm thinking, how could I make it look slightly decent? And effectively what I've done here is I've put in a piece of wide copper tape just to cover up the damage until I get another set. And it's one of those things I would dearly love to restore it fully and make it absolutely spot on, but there's too much damage to this particular set to make it anything other than a working set rather than a museum piece. And it's not damage that I've done myself totally. It came to me with a bent sidebar, which was here, and that's what basically I'm going to show you in a minute. I figured out what the rubbing noise was. Let me turn this over. We've got a couple of minutes left here before the camera dies. The whole of this assembly is on a flywheel, and as you see, it moves this gear ratio. So as that turns, which is your control knob on the front, it moves the pointer sort of up and down. So if I get out of the way and move it in a little bit, you should be able to see that as you spin the dial, the gearing takes over, and that spins the pointer. Now, again, whoever was in here before, they'd not actually tightened the flywheel, so the flywheel's actually floating loose on this shaft, and what's happened with that is that's what's hit this, which is the small numbered scale, and it had also, and I'm going to see if I can get this angle. I don't know if I'm going to be able to show it to you. I might have to zoom in. Let's see if I can zoom in. I'm going to have to turn the lights right up. But there's this... I'm going to get the focus. Come on, focus. Focus down here. Right, okay. Here we go. Managed to get it to focus now. What you have is, this is the flywheel, and this is the spindle that comes through from the front panel. And what happens is it clamps using this spring and the tension on this spring between this sort of large washer and this part of the spindle against this disc. Now, this disc, as I spin it round, hopefully I'll find it before there, you can actually see that the disc is bent and somebody's levered it, or it's had some form of damage on it, so it actually does a jump at that point. And again, if I keep going round, you can see there's a few more points that are not in particularly good condition. So realistically, I'd like to change this front panel. Yep, so this is the brass guide rod, which has the pointer on, and the one underneath is the sliding rod that actually the pointer slides up and down on. The cord is sprung here, and that is just a free wheel. But again, the hole for this is excessively large, considering, you know, how easy it would be to fall off of there. So it's a case of you know, there's bits that need doing. This wheel here was bent, so the dial cord was actually going down at an angle and not smoothly going onto this wheel and following the line of the pointer. So again, that was not as good as it should be. So those are the things that I've found so far. You know, I've actually cleaned up the shaft in here and I've re-lubricated it. I've, you know, cleaned up again the old grease off these gears and re-lubricated them. You know, I've kept these plastic ones dry because obviously I don't want to grease plastic in case it reacts with the plastic. And again, I've left that bit dry. The cord feels reasonably good, but then, you know, things we say, things we do, you know what's going to happen. The minute I say the cord is perfect, it'll snap on me. So that's the front panel, and as you see, these are where the fibre washers would sit, and these are the 4 holes for the 2 chrome handles. So let's go there. So yeah, on the whole, you know, yeah, apart from my greasy fingerprints over the front, and you know, going to clean this bit up, get some of the dust out the edges of here. You know, it's working, but it's not as pretty as it should be. So that's the front panel. So what have I got left to show you? Well, I thought I'd just tip out the bag of capacitors that I've changed. That one and that one and that one were all in the BFO. These were the 4 that decoupled the valves 4 and 5, 3, 4 and 5. This was one of the bypass capacitors. This was another of the bypass capacitors. That was the power tubes bypass, and this was the one in the main tuning section that decoupled the antenna. And as you see, these are there. I've put them on the tester, and the leakage tester says, you've got to be joking. These are all leaky as, and put your own expletive in there. They're just, you know, these aren't so bad, but they are starting to leak, which is why I changed them. These are just completely gone crispy. All the contents, as you see, have melted away, and just, you know, they're beyond salvation. Yeah, you know, oh, there's another one of the electrolytics there. So, you know, these are leaky capacitors. Get rid of them. The actual resistor values, I did check resistors, and they've all come up as pretty good. I'm going to refer back to the schematics, which we'll have to turn the light down, otherwise we're going to blind everything here. So well, let's see if I can do it the other way and get a better focus in. Right, there we go. What I've been doing is, as I've been going through, there's a few more I have to mark off, you know, especially around here. but I marked in the orange is the B plus lines before it hits any components. The blue is the B minus, the negative line, and that's, you know, self-explanatory. The green is components I've tested that are within tolerance, and the yellows are components I've replaced, and as you see they're pretty much all capacitors. Some are decoupling caps which go straight to earth. Now they mark earth on here, meaning the chassis, because down in this bottom corner, and I'm going to zoom into here, if you plug the aerial switch on the back of the set into the E section, that wire then goes from the chassis to the cabinet, so that possibly could make your chassis hot, although in theory all you've got coming down here is antenna voltages, so that's coming from your antenna through a resistor down to that side, decoupled switch, through the IF coil, or the first IF coils here, the tuned coils. So shouldn't be any major voltage there to the cabinet. You know, if you are in that position, it should be relatively safe. Okay, so we've gone from, you know, where the cabinet earth's out here. So following it through, you can see that I've checked, you know, quite a few of the resistors. In fact, I've checked more than this, but I've been going through in stages, and I got sort of sidetracked in doing the front panel when I found which control was live. And I'm going to move over to this side of the diagram. What I found, again, here is the tone control, which is not only connected to the anode of the output valve via this capacitor, which was leaky, it also connects straight to the B plus line from this side. And with this situation like this, you've got the whole body of the pot was at the full B plus. So that being the way it was, and the fact that it was being run at AC, and the other thing that was quite important, these two lines were actually reversed, so the hot line was actually here, and this was the neutral line, so this was only rectifying on half cycles. This body of this particular pot was actually live on the front panel, which is why I got the shock from it. Now I've found out, you know, the cause of it, it won't be a problem. I've just got to get something fabricated to insulate that from the front panel when I put it back together again, and make sure that, you know, the chassis doesn't you know, put any voltage onto the cabinet. But apart from that, this is actually a nice straightforward set. It doesn't help that nothing here is marked as to its purpose, and it certainly doesn't help that the radio itself doesn't have any sort of sensible clues as to what anything's going. So, you know, if you're looking for, you know, a particular capacitor, you've got to sort of trace back to the last point it connects to and work it out from that. In fact, I know I've changed those two there. That cap and the resistor's fine, but the cap's been changed. Again, this cap here's been changed, so I should really mark them in. So let's put my yellow in there, put my yellow in there, and my green to say that I've done it. I'm going to put that resistor and that resistor, and I did check that one because that is the only way to find out where it went to. And This C38 is a decoupling cap, which if I remember right is a nice little 100 picofarad ceramic C38, which is absolutely fine. But why am I marking it as changed? I didn't change it, so I need to mark that one green. I'm confusing myself now. So that one's fine. And that obviously leads into the tune stage here. The ceramic capacitors that are on the isolation part of the antenna here, these two are absolutely fine. There's no problem with those. Resistors, as I say, all in tolerance. So that's where we are with the set. Now, if somebody has a dead Eddystone 840A and they want shot of it and they don't want silly money, I've just seen a C go on eBay as a final price of 50 quid. So I'm not really going to put too much money into this set because, to be quite honest, it's probably not worth it. This is more an exercise in, you know, making it work a bit better and making it safe and making it usable. But if anybody does have a dead Eddystone set that I can take parts from, you know, a new slide rule scale, a new switch here for the noise limiter, you know, and even getting the relevant proper insulation parts for here and some spares, it'd be worth it to me for that. Obviously, if it came with valves as well, I'd be even more grateful, but beggars can't be choosers. So yeah, if anybody's got one, I'm in the market, but it would have to be the right price. I'm obviously not prepared to sort of spend vintage kit money on something that isn't worth it. If I'm going to be totally honest, this is just for a bit of fun and just to see how I can make this old set perform. With that, I'm gonna say, well, what have we been doing now? We must have at least 20 odd minutes of me talking and not really doing any work this time, after the last epic of an hour or so of me soldering a few bits. I thought I'd come away from that and just do a calm, collected talking video, explaining what's going on with the circuit. I did do what I said I was going to do, and I did actually get another copy of the diagram marked up with all the component values so that I know which ones at least I'm looking for. So if I say, there's a 22k resistor, I can say, right, okay, where have I got a 22k? Well, I've got one there. I've got, you know, yeah, it's a 270k. There's a 22 ohm. There's a, you know, I can look through and I can, you know, give myself some sort of basic look through, and you know, it just made things a bit easier. For the final part, hopefully, I'm going to get it together, and then once it's together, I will be going through the alignment instructions. I'll be doing the voltage checks and you know, basically putting it back together, making it look as if it's one complete radio, and making sure it doesn't kill me, and then just, you know, as I say, fire it up and see if we can actually hear anything on either the broadcast or the shortwave bands, and that will just prove that I've actually put it together properly, which will be really nice. So with that, I'm going to leave you with the end shot of the circuit diagram, because I think that's about the nicest thing I can show you at the moment. I'm extremely disappointed with myself with that front panel. and the way it's got damaged. That's my own fault. No, I was going to show you something else, wasn't I? We haven't finished. These are the bolts that hold the front chrome bars on. There's the rest of the bolts. And in the box, these are the bars themselves. Now we've got 1, 2, they look like they lay flat, but if you actually look, they're not quite straight. You know, this one is definitely bent inwards at the bottom, and that was the bolt. I'm going to zoom you in. I'm going to turn up some light, probably against the white background, it's easier to see. That's also one of the reasons why the front panel was very difficult to get on and off. And yeah, so this is another reason why I'm looking for a junker, if I can find one, so that I can get replacements for these, get replacements for these, and basically if I can make one good one out of 2, then I will. If not, there's got to be some way of redoing the scale. I'm sure somebody can come up with some ideas. If you'd like to put them in the comments, it'd be great. If anybody has any other comments, please let me know. Always keen to hear. And also, if you'd like to make sure that you get notifications as soon as I release the next part, if you click on the little bell icon, you'll actually get all the reminders of all the videos as I release them. If you'd like to subscribe, it'd be appreciated. If you like it, let me know. If you don't like it, put it in the comments. Thanks very much for watching, and hopefully we'll see you in part 3. Bye for now.